Okay, so for this deep dive, we're looking at how to become a pilot, and we've got some info here that should really help anyone listening figure out that first step.
Yeah, like where do you even begin,
Yeah,
right? I mean, it's exciting, but there are so many different um, pieces to it.
yeah, so let's break it down.
Great.
So we're mainly focusing on the U.S. here, and from what I'm seeing in all these articles and guides and stuff, um, there are really two main paths.
Right, military or civilian. And
Exactly.
each one obviously has its own, pros and cons and requirements and all that.
For sure, but before we even dive into all that,
Yeah.
one thing that kind of jumped out at me is this whole thing about the FAA medical certificate.
Oh, yeah, that's huge.
You can't even really start training without it, right?
Nope, it's a prerequisite for pretty much everything.
And there are different classes of medical certificates or something.
Yeah, so you've got like first class, second class, and third class.
Yeah.
First class is the most stringent, and that's what you'll need if you're aiming to be like an airline pilot or something, professional.
Got it.
Third class is for like recreational flying. So if you're just wanting to fly for fun, on the weekends or whatever.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then second class is kind of in between. You don't see that as often.
Okay.
But yeah, you absolutely need to get the right medical clearance before you do anything else.
And what's really interesting is that a lot of these guides are saying even before you apply for the medical licensure, you should talk to a flight instructor.
That's a great point, actually.
Yeah, why is that?
Well, because the FAA has some pretty specific requirements, vision, hearing, all sorts of stuff.
Right.
And a flight instructor can kind of give you a heads up on what to expect.
So it's like a pre-screening almost.
Exactly. And it can save you a lot of time and hassle down the road.
Oh, you see.
Imagine going through the whole application process only to find out you don't meet some obscure requirement or something.
That would be so frustrating.
Exactly. So yeah, definitely chat with an instructor first.
Okay, and the application itself is all done online, right?
Yep, through this thing called MedExpress.
MedExpress.
It's on the FAA website, medexpress.faa.gov.
Okay, so that's good to know.
Yeah.
All right, so let's say you've got your medical all sorted.
Uh-huh.
You're good to go. What's next?
Well, then you have to decide how you want to do your training.
Ah.
Because in the U.S., there are two main ways to get your pilot's license. Part 61 and Part 141.
Okay, so I've seen those terms thrown around a lot, but what's the difference?
So Part 61 is more flexible.
Okay.
You can kind of train at your own pace.
Okay.
Choose your own instructor, choose your own school kind of thing.
So it's more tailored to your schedule and stuff.
Exactly, yeah. And it's often a bit cheaper, too.
Oh, okay.
Part 141, on the other hand, is much more structured.
Right.
It follows a very specific FAA-approved syllabus.
Got it.
And it's usually done through, a big flight school or a university.
So is one better than the other?
Not necessarily. It really depends on your individual circumstances. If you have a busy work schedule or you travel a lot, Part 61 might be a better fit.
Right.
But if you're someone who prefers structure and you want to get through the training as quickly as possible, Part 141 might be the way to go.
Okay.
And honestly, it's worth looking at things like the reputation of the school or the instructor, their pass rates, things like that.
That's a good point, yeah.
Because ultimately, you want to make sure you're getting quality training.
Right.
So it's not just about the price tag or the schedule,
Exactly. It's like finding the right fit.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you've chosen Part 61 or 141. You've got your school or your instructor all lined up. What's next?
Well, you need to create a training plan.
Oh, okay.
And this is where you sit down with your instructor and you map out exactly what you need to do to get your license.
So it's like a roadmap.
Exactly.
Okay.
You know how many flight hours you need, what kind of maneuvers you need to learn all that jazz?
And speaking of learning, there's also the whole written test thing, right?
Oh, yeah. Can't forget about that.
You have to pass a written exam before you can actually get your license.
Yep. It covers all sorts of stuff like aviation regulations, meteorology, navigation, all that good stuff.
Fun stuff, right?
Yeah. Well, it's important,
Oh, absolutely.
And there are some really good test prep materials out there.
Like what?
Well, I know a lot of people use Sporties.
Okay.
There's also M0A and King School.
Those are all companies that specialize in pilot training resources.
Exactly.
Wow.
And one thing to keep in mind is that you'll need an endorsement from your flight instructor before you can actually take the written test.
Oh, really? So you can't just sign up and go?
Nope. Your instructor has to verify that you're ready.
Okay.
Which is another reason why it's so important to find a good instructor early on.
Yeah. They're kind of like your guide through this whole process. Okay, so we've talked about medicals, we've talked about training, we've talked about the written test. What about the big one?
The cost.
Yeah, because this isn't exactly a cheap hobby.
No, definitely not.
So what are we talking about here, numbers-wise?
Well, it depends on what kind of license you're going for.
Ah, okay.
If you want to become a professional pilot, like fly for an airline or something,
Right.
you're looking at an average cost of around $100,000.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, that's a big investment.
But if you're just wanting to fly for fun,
Mm-hmm.
get your private pilot license.
Right.
It's a bit more manageable, right?
Yeah, usually around $15,000.
Okay. Still a chunk of change,
Yeah.
but definitely less intimidating.
Yeah, for sure.
And there are financing options available, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Look.
Well, there are loans specifically for flight training.
Okay.
There are also scholarships available.
Got it.
And then, of course, there's always the option of just saving up and paying out of pocket.
Right. Self-funding.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's good to know that there are options.
Yeah, for sure.
But I know some people listening are probably still on the fence,
Yeah.
Like they're not sure if they actually want to commit to this whole pilot thing.
Totally understandable.
So is there like a low-pressure way to kind of test the waters?
There is. It's called a discovery flight.
A discovery flight?
Yeah.
Okay, what's that?
It's basically a short introductory flight with an instructor.
Okay.
You get to sit in the cockpit. You get to maybe even hold the controls a little bit.
No way.
Yeah, and you can see if you actually enjoy being up in the air.
So there's like a no strings attached kind of thing.
Exactly. It's meant to be fun,
I love that.
Yeah, it's a great way to kind of get a taste of what flying is all about.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So as you're listening to all this,
Mm.
we've talked about medical requirements, training options,
Yeah.
The cost, the discovery flight, all these things.
Yeah.
What's the one thing that's like popping into your head right now that you're like, huh,
Yeah.
I need to learn more about that?
Yeah.
What's your biggest question right now?
Exactly, because there's a lot to digest here. But if you can identify that one thing that's really piquing your curiosity, that's a great starting point.
For sure.
And it'll help you kind of focus your research and figure out those next steps.
Absolutely.
So yeah, think about that. What's your biggest question about becoming a pilot right now?
And maybe that'll be the topic of our next deep dive.
Yeah, who knows? We'll see.
Sounds good.
All right, thanks for listening, everybody.
See ya.
Bye.